Alright, so we're gonna showcase the Diviner in a two-player scenario with the Spell Weaver. I'll explain at the end of the video why I chose the Spell Weaver as my partner. I'll have my friend here helping out with controlling the Spell Weaver, so big thanks to them for their help. We will be playing with open information as though this were a solo game, which means that while we are able to see each other's cards and initiatives and discuss our plays in detail, we will be bumping up the scenario level by 1 to compensate. So this is going to be played at scenario level 2 with the two-player setup. We will track XP gain so as to give a rough idea of how much XP the Diviner can earn in a scenario, but we won't be tracking gold. Nor will we be playing with battle goals. Our primary objective is simple: kill all enemies. We've already played our first set of cards, and the enemy bandit guards have already performed their shield action without moving, acting before us. So let's head right to the table and get started. 30 is me, so I'm going to perform Void Snare's bottom. Attack 1, range 3, target 2, immobilize on... I'll start with Elite number 1 and then Bandit Guard number 2. So they are both immobilized. I'm going to draw +2. So number 1 takes 3 damage. Number 2, yes. And number 2 takes ×2, so 2 damage. Cool. So that is done. That gains me 1 EXP. Okay. Then the next 6 times I shuffle a curse, it goes as a 6 card from the top. So that's a lost card. And I'm done. Alright, so let's explain the moves I made while we watched the Spell Weaver perform their high damage turn. So we played Void Snare for its bottom. Usually Void Snare is played for its top, but in situations such as this, when we are up against nothing but melee enemies, Void Snare's Immobilize comes in very useful in mitigating damage because as ranged characters, as long as we can keep them out of range 1, they don't do any damage to us, and as such, you know, it does the job of damage mitigation like the top would, but gives us 1 EXP to boot. Now, we played the top of Bad Omen on our first turn so that we can start getting down to cursing our enemies as soon as possible. This, as a top action, does no damage, so we are really leaning on the Spell Weaver to get the damage done and kill these guards before they start killing us. From the Spell Weaver side, they use their lost card on turn 1, Fire Orbs, to deal massive damage and infuse fire. This managed to hit all 3 of the enemy guards. Now, one really awesome thing about the way the first turn worked out was that the guards actually played at initiative 15 before the initiative 30 of my Void Snare. This means that the immobilize effect I applied this turn, actually carries on to next turn as well. The guards will not be able to move next turn either. So this is huge. It gives us 1 more turn to pummel at them without having to retreat. We need to move. Yes, getting hit by 1 isn't a big deal. That's really funny. I mean, you could try, although it is a lost card. I would like you to dish out as much damage as possible. Well, wound is damage. Yeah. Well, I have a card that says shield 2 affect all allies in range 2, so not this turn lah, maybe next turn. So yeah, you can definitely afford to tank. I suppose, yeah. Alright, I'm going to play Cursnado, and I can arrange someone's modifier deck. It's gonna be either the monsters or yours. There's no point in arranging mine. The initiative are both crap, so I'll just leave it as it is. Are you confirmed? On the next turn, the Spellweaver goes first, followed by the Guard, and finally myself, the Diviner. The Spellweaver takes advantage of the infused fire from Fire Orbs to play Flame Strike, which wounds the Elite Guard. So hopefully this should chew through the Guard's shield and kill it in good time. Now the Guards are then going to perform a move to an attack and then strengthen themselves. So thankfully, the two immobilized guards will not be able to get in range of an attack. However, they still will be strengthened, so next turn is going to be quite tricky. The last guard, however, is going to get in range and is going to be able to target down one of us depending on how the Spellweaver moves. As you can see, the Spellweaver moves such that neither of us can be reached in melee range by a move 2 from the furthest guard. Alright, now for my move, I will play Anticipate Intricacies, which curses 2 targets within range 3. There are 2 targets within range 3, so let's do that. 2 curses into the deck, and I'm going to use Bad Omen, which advances twice, gaining me 2 XP. And this will now be the... technically the rules say they are supposed to be face down, but players get to choose, and if we are bookkeeping, we would know that those are over there anyway. So now we are going to use Peer into Battle's top. Unfortunately, I don't have light, so I can only see 3 cards. I'm going to peer at the top 3 cards of the monster deck. So we'll flip them over. Well, there is a shuffle card. I guess it's going here. Okay. Darkness is infused, so I'll infuse Darkness here. And this is discarded. So the purpose of playing Peer into Battle at that juncture was to ensure that on the next subsequent attacks from the monsters, they wouldn't draw a shuffle card, meaning a null or a 2 times, which would ruin the curses that I just inserted with Anticipate Intricacies. Unfortunately for us, we did reveal a 2 times off the top of the deck. So that means that eventually the monsters will draw the 2 times, and that will cause the deck to shuffle, which is quite bad, right? We don't want that to happen. So upon seeing that shuffle card on the top of the deck, I have no choice but to prematurely use my minus stamina potion here. This allows me to recover Anticipate Intricacies, which I will now use for the top action, which allows me to bury cards that I see on the top of the monster's modifier deck. So now that I know that there's a 2 times up there, by playing this card, I can definitively put the 2 times at the bottom of the deck. So that showcases how important it is to remain flexible with your play as the Diviner. Had I not seen a shuffle card on top of the monster modifier deck, I wouldn't be using my stamina potion here. Life would go on as normal. Another really neat thing about using the minus stamina potion here is that if you notice, last turn we actually infused Darkness with Anticipate Intricacies itself, using the bottom action to curse twice. This fuels the Darkness needed for Anticipate Intricacies top action, which consumes Darkness to allow us to see and bury more cards. So this is very convenient for us. But that's just our top action. I'm actually still deliberating on my bottom action here. I considered playing Duality Shards for some range damage, but eventually decided on playing otherworldly journey instead for the decent initiative and the teleport 4 on the bottom, allowing me to reposition myself in a better place to carry out my subsequent turns. So we begin the round, and the Spellweaver performs a mana bolt, plinking away at one of the guards before retreating. Because the guards will move last in this turn, however, they will be coming down heavy on us with an attack +1 for massive damage. So we want to avoid that as much as possible. Okay, so that is done. Now it's my turn at 34. I'm going to start with the top to consume darkness. Can you help me with that? Thanks. Review the top 2 cards, or rather review the top 4 cards and place up to 2 cards on the bottom of the deck. So 1, 2, 3, and 4. So -1. So I'm going to bury the ×2. So the ×2 goes at the bottom. And I'll rearrange these in any order I like, which is going to be +0, +0, -1. Ah, yeah, of course. I thought they were muddled. Okay, yeah, strengthened. Yeah, it's the other way around. Makes sense. Sorry about that. I forgot how Gloomhaven works. So that is done, and that gains me 1 XP. Alright. Now the bottom is teleport, which I'll use to go right behind you, so that you will take the damage. Alright, now the guards move. First the elite, which takes 1 damage. Right, okay. So I'm going to use heal 4. So you are going to gain 4 health. Alright, infuse light, and this is discarded. Now the bottom is going to be a move 2, which I will conveniently not resolve, I guess. So protective aura here was used for its 13 initiative, nothing more. Which ended up being really important because the guards went at a blazing fast 15 initiative this turn. First, let's do the guard. The guards get shield, and wait, this one loses 1 health. Alright, so the guard will draw it. Alright, on to the Spellweaver, who uses the top of Frost Armor to perform a base attack 3 on the guard nearest to it, after moving away, of course, to avoid disadvantage. With advantage, thanks to Eagle Eye Goggles, the Spellweaver drew a ×2 and a -1, which was sufficient to punch through the guard who has 1 shield. So that secures a really important kill for us. Here, the Spellweaver runs out of cards and as such has to take a long rest. Meanwhile, I'm going to finish the last 2 cards in my hand. It really only is a question of which order I should play them in. I'm obviously going for the faster initiative here. Sadly, the guards play at initiative 30, which beats me. Right, the guards go first. Awesome. Absolutely awesome. So, Elite loses health and moves a lot into range of me and performs an attack. -1. How much damage is that? 2 damage. Yep, sure, I'll handle this. The next guard moves here and will also draw from the deck. Oh, surprise, it's a curse. So the curse goes away. And that's it from the guards. Now it's my turn, and my job here is to make the most of the remaining 2 cards I played. So I'm looking at the top of Dimensional Transfer, which turns a unit invisible and stuns it. Now, any of you who have played Gloomhaven for any amount of time would know of the stun wound combo. When a unit is both stunned and wounded, it will take 1 extra damage during the stun turn. While it's out of action, the wound still applies. So I'm looking at the Elite Guard and I realize that by stunning it here, we essentially are able to kill it without it being able to act any further. Right? The next turn it will be stunned and will go down to 1 health, and then the turn after it will take another 1 damage from the wound when its turn begins, so it will die before even getting to act. It's a very wonky skill. Alright, so that's done. I can use the bottom of Duality Shards for an attack 2, pool 1, but it's at disadvantage from where I am. So I'm gonna resolve that. Here's my deck. +1, +1. So 3 damage. So that happens here. Now we are interleaving our long rest. It's my turn to long rest, and you can see that I've retrieved all my cards back into my hand because now I'm reviewing which card to lose on the long rest. This is a tricky problem. The Diviner's cards are all important, so picking one to lose is really not easy. After much deliberation, I settled on dropping Otherworldly Journey. That's the card with decent initiative and a teleport 4 on the bottom. This is quite dangerous. You typically don't want to lose your teleport 4s until you move into the second room. But here I felt like I was forced to do so, otherwise I would lose a lot of utility down the line. So this leaves me with 7 hand size, while the Spellweaver plinks away at the last normal guard. It is now dead. And this means we've basically completed the first room. The remaining elite guard will immolate itself on its wound, as mentioned earlier. While the guard is busy dying, we set ourselves up for breaching the next room. Alright, I'll resolve mine. It's basically just move towards the door. Where am I? 1, 2, 3, 4. Oh, yeah. Good point, thanks. Alright, then I'm going to place a rift token on the door. I cannot place it inside. Whoa, that's huge ass. That doesn't look right. I guess we could. Alright. Alright. Rift token done. And the next thing I'll do is... Come on, camera. Okay. Yeah, that's it. Done. Done. Got. Here I made the very questionable move of using Void Snare to place a Rift token in the doorway. Yeah, I was thinking the Rift token, the disarm effect would persist, but no, it only lasts for this turn. Yeah, okay, so that was dumb. Alright. So that would have been totally fine if I were playing a Rift token based Diviner. However, with my Bad Omen Curse based build, I only have one Rift card in my entire deck, Void Snare. So by expending it to place the Rift token in the doorway, I don't have any other Rift cards to follow up with on subsequent turns when I open the door and the guards inevitably come rushing through the door. So I guess you can see how the playstyles differ. With a Rift-based Diviner, you can set your tokens up before opening doors. Putting them in doorways is a very good way to do so because it's a natural choke point. Whereas if you are playing a non-Rift card-based Diviner, there's no such thing as setting up Rift tokens. You simply play Void Snare as and when you see enemies moving towards you. So that's something interesting I learned and discovered while doing this initial playthrough of the Diviner. We prepare to open the door on our next turn. The Orchid Spellweaver goes before me and as such uses their Reviving Ether's bottom action to move into the room, revealing the room, and then moving back out. There's no way we're going to enter the new room and, you know, get damaged by all these new monsters here. So unfortunately the monsters get to move first before I get to move because I'm going very slowly. Thankfully though, none of them have much in the way of movement from their actions, so they won't be able to get into range of myself. The elite archer at the back is not moving at all. Alright, so now the bandit guards are advancing. Additionally, the bandit guards gain strengthen, which is a very scary prospect for the next turn. But that's the enemy's done, and then it's over to my turn. Here I played a couple of interesting cards. I start off with the bottom of Anticipate Intricacies, which adds 2 more curses into the deck, so we'll do that real quick, stacking those curses with Bad Omen into the Modifier deck. Alright, so here is where a couple of really dodgy things happen. Apologies for that, but so the first mistake was that I completely forgot Anticipate Intricacies was a bottom action. So I tried to resolve my other card as a bottom move too, even though I've already resolved a bottom action this turn. This was completely illegal. I ended up using the move 2 to retreat so that I wouldn't get hit next turn. But you'll soon realize, due to the cards I play next turn, that this actually doesn't matter. Thank goodness for that. Yeah, so I should have resolved a top action instead. So what ended up happening was that I inadvertently forfeited my top action, which was, I believe, Peer into Battle, which allows me to see the top 3 cards of a modifier deck. That would have been a useful effect, but I forfeited it. The next thing you'll notice is that we retroactively adjusted the Spellweaver's position. Remember that they played Reviving Ether's move 4 jump last turn and made the Spellweaver flee all the way to the left of the room? Well, we retroactively decided to keep the Spellweaver near the center, near the door. This is because after analyzing the Diviner's cards, and more importantly the cards that I had remaining, most of my support cards only affect allies and not myself. So if there is one member in our team that should be taking damage, it actually, ironically, should be the Spellweaver. Despite her fragility, the Diviner is that much more fragile and cannot support herself. So we get the Spellweaver in front, as you can see in our positioning, in front of myself, the Diviner, so that the Spellweaver will be the one taking the damage. It should be noted that no random events, such as drawing modifier cards or monster actions cards, took place after the Spellweaver's initial turn. So, it's not like we were rewinding the game in reaction to some sort of unexpected random element happening. Meanwhile, I can support the Spellweaver by playing Protective Aura, granting my ally a shield too. I played another card for a bottom move too, but that was not resolved. Had I not made the mistake earlier of resolving 2 bottom move actions, I would have used the move 2 on the bottom to move into where I am currently. So basically, misplaying the move 2 1 turn earlier did not make a difference because I would have ended up in this position behind the Spellweaver no matter what. So this was good. Everything worked out in the end because I managed to get my shield 2 off before the enemy's move. What this means is that my Spellweaver was granted a shield, which didn't matter because the only attack that my Spellweaver ally took was cursed. The Elite Archer drew a null, so the shield, didn't really matter. In the meantime, my ally Spellweaver was taking a long rest, and while she got immobilized, that wore off from the long rest, and now we are back in the game. Well, not quite. I only have 1 card remaining in my hand, so it's time for me to decide whether to long rest or short rest right here. Given that we were in the thick of combat, I think short resting is the right move here. I'm gonna short rest first. Void Snare. I'll reroll that, I think. So I'm going to lose 1 health, and I will lose Ray of Light, which is my healing move. Because I re-rolled my short rest, I should have lost 1 hit point, but I forgot to reflect that on my hit point bar, so apologies for that. We move on to the next round. The Archer moves first. It's yes, so that's move 2, range 5. Yes, 1 step. And you get hit for 2 damage. So I'm gonna draw. -2. So you took no damage, and a trap is created. Yes, and it will spawn it right in front of the Bandit Guard. This should be interesting. Unfortunately, I used my pull ability a bit too early. After the Archer, next to move is my allied Spellweaver. They played Reviving Ether's move 4 jump bottom, followed by Frost Armor's top action, which is a ranged attack. Now you might think it's pretty crazy for the Spellweaver to move closer to the heat of the battle. However, my ally was able to safely do so because I'm going to be next to move, and I played Void Snare's top. So I will be able to activate all existing rifts and cause the disarm effect to any enemies who walk through them, and the guards certainly will. Which means that my allied Spellweaver will be safe from the guards' melee attacks. Playing Void Snare also allows me to place down a second Rift token. Not that it matters, I'll just place it here. And Duality Shards bottom does nothing. Range 3, I'm a bit too far. But I can resolve this as a move 2, which would be pretty handy. Do I want to move forward? Do I? I think I want to do this. Alright, so we are done. The guard's turn. Void Snare disarms. Alright, and this actually lasts until their next turn. We move on to the next turn where the Spellweaver acts first. Now, the Spellweaver played two big damage cards. One is the top loss action of Impaling Eruption, which is going to shoot out a series of spikes straight forward, hitting the weakened guard as well as the archer at the back. Then the Spellweaver will follow up with Flame Strike's bottom action, which is a ranged attack. Even though it's disadvantaged against the guard in melee range because the Impaling Eruption did not finish off the melee range guard, Flame Strike does manage to pick it off at the end despite the disadvantage. And that's it for the Spellweaver's move. A lot of damage done. Now it's time for the Archer. Alright, now the Archer moves and will unfortunately target you. Yeah, about that. Alright, so it won't move. It'll just simply hit you for 4 damage, right? I'll draw a card. -1. Wow, we are getting really lucky. 3 damage. Alright. Now it's... Ooh, you killed that one, which means that I can only put 1 curse in with my bottom action. So I'll do exactly that, which infuses darkness. So I'm going to discard this and we'll put 1 curse in. This advances by 1 and I gain 1 XP. Now, that was my bottom action. With my top action, I'm going to play Dimensional Transfer. I'm going to make something invisible and stunned. Now, I was gonna say, do I do it on the guard or yourself? Probably on you. So please turn invisible and get stunned. So this was the perfect time to play Dimensional Transfer to stun my ally because my allied Spellweaver plans to long rest next turn anyway. They have no more cards in hand. So it's really the perfect time to use Dimensional Transfer. Of course, I was considering stunning an enemy unit such as the Bandit Guard in melee range of my allied Spellweaver, but since it's already disarmed, I may as well put the Invis to better use by protecting my allied Spellweaver when they're most vulnerable, that is, when they're long resting. Because of this invisibility, when it comes to the Bandit Guard's turn to move, they will target me instead because they cannot see my allied Spellweaver being invisible. Next turn, I play the remaining 2 cards in my hand at the fastest possible initiative. And here, the situational nature of the Diviner's cards proves to be a hindrance. Alright, the first thing I'll do is to resolve a top attack. This will be an attack 2 on the guard. -2, 0 damage. And then I will scurry away. 1, 2, 3. Right, so if I move here, I should be safe. So yes, for my bottom action, I'm resolving a default move 2 because the enemy elite archer is not moving but performing a long range attack, and I wanted to get out of range of it because it was a powerful attack +1. Here I fiddle around with where to move. I could either choose to move downwards or I could choose to move leftwards towards the side of the room. I eventually decided to move to the side of the room. Probably because I wanted to avoid line of sight against the archer. So all I did this turn was to resolve the default attack 2 and move 2, which goes to show how the Diviner's actions are only useful sometimes. For example, I had the option to use a heal 1 regenerate all allies as my bottom action. But looking at the battlefield and this situation, the best optimal move is actually resolving a move 2, because that would avoid damage, which is better than a heal. Same with the top action. While I could peer into battle and rearrange modifier decks, I felt like it was just better to do damage to the guard so that we can get it out of the way as soon as possible, rather than mess around with modifier decks that may or may not make a difference. And I think this is a big weakness of the Diviner, especially when you get down to the last 2 or 3 cards in your hand after each rest cycle. If those remaining 2 or 3 cards happen to be not useful in the current battle or the current situation, you're just going to resolve them as vanilla moves 2s and attack 2s, which pales in comparison to the more versatile or powerful actions offered by other classes. Perhaps I'm playing the Diviner suboptimally. If I plan my turns out better, I wouldn't be left with situationally useless cards remaining in my hand. I suppose that's one of the very tricky aspects of dealing with the Diviner as a character. With that done, it's now my turn to long rest while the Spellweaver does some damage to the Bandit Guard. Alright, so you're done. Archer. Archer range +1. So it's just gonna hit you from here and immobilize you, so please take an immobilize token. You will take 2 damage only, thankfully. +1, 3 damage. Alright, so they are done. The guard is gonna hit me instead for 3 damage. There is 1. Alright, and lastly I long rest, healing 2 health. Here I decide to lay rest to my Workhorse Cursing card in Anticipate Intricacies. With Bad Omen pretty much done with, I don't really think I need to curse enemies anymore, besides we are approaching the final room anyway. So we are gonna lose that, but this also puts our hand size down to 5. This is usually where I consider ourselves to be in the danger zone, because from here on out, we only get 2 turns worth of actions per rest cycle. There really isn't much gas left in the tank. With this time pressure, I decided to go on the offensive and lock in duality shards in an attempt to do some damage. But first, basically everyone else, well, at least the Orchid Spellweaver and the Guard are going to go first. My allied Spellweaver plays a heal, followed by Reviving Ether's Top, the signature ability that recovers all Spellweaver's cards. But that means she's not doing any damage, so the Guard gets to attack me using their ranged attack. They drew a ranged attack this turn, so the Guard moves away from me to lose disadvantage before hitting me with their attack. Alright, so the Guard here will attack me for attack 0 range 2. So, sorry, attack... how much? 3. Attack 3. Oh, look at that. Alright, so the Guard is done. Now it's my turn. I'm going to resolve Teleport 4. So this is a discard. I'm going to move 1, 2, 3, 4. And then on the top action, I'm going to perform Duality Shards, which is an attack 3. +2. So that's 5 damage, and it is just dead. Yep, could you delete it? Because I can't delete. That is good for the next room. Alright. So the archer is dead, so they won't get to do anything next turn. So you'll notice there that yes, the Easter Diviner does have some offensive power in her. Attack 3 on the top can be very powerful, especially if you draw the right attack modifier. And even if I did not, I still had the backup in the push. The push would have allowed me to push the archer into the trap, which would have killed it regardless. So yeah, showcasing the power of duality shards there, as well as dimensional transfers bottom, guaranteeing that I would be able to move within range. Most normal move force might be thwarted by enemy movement, but with teleport's movement ignoring traps and monsters in the path to the destination hex, we were able to move ourselves into the range required for duality shards, guaranteed. With that power turn done with, we move on to the next round, where once again the situational nature of my cards proves to be suboptimal. Right, I play my Shield 2 here, however the Shield 2 isn't going to do anything because the only remaining enemy chose to perform a Shield 1 Retaliate 2 with no attack. And my bottom action, which is Heal 1 all allies, well, that's going to be helpful, but certainly not anything to write home about. My ally wasn't missing too much health, so the regenerate effect didn't really come into play. Over to the Spellweaver's turn. They resolve a bottom move action to get out of retaliate range before performing a small attack on the Guard. Unfortunately, with the negative attack modifier, the Guard is left alive with a sliver of health, and that ends this round. Subsequently, I perform a long rest while waiting for my allied Spellweaver to finish off the Guard and move further into the second room. You will see that I have a lot of cards in my hand. Well, this is after the long rest. I still need to decide on one of these cards to lose at the end of my turn. So the Spellweaver here is going to just resolve their Frost Armor's top to do range damage to kill the Guard, except that they drew a very untimely miss. So the guard is still left alive. This is really not optimal here. Yeah, and now I have to long rest, going down to a dangerous hand size of 4. So after the Spellweaver missed her attack on the Bandit Guard, we got her into the second room so that she can begin working on the third room as soon as possible, while I'm still alive, available to support her. I don't have that many turns left, as I said. So I lost my shield card to long resting, and then on the following turn, the Bandit Guard moves first, doing the ranged attack once again. Since I'm the closest target, I'm gonna get hit for 2 damage. Then following that, it's my turn. I played Dimensional Transfer for the Teleport 4, which allows me to teleport right onto the door, opening the final room. We needed a door opener who could open the door and then get back into the second room without triggering any of the damage traps. We wanted to lure the living bones into the damage traps. So I was the perfect candidate. With teleport, I'm able to open the door without triggering the traps. I'm also able to stand in the doorway without taking damage because I had my invisibility cloak still unused. So I went invisible. This allowed me to stay safe. The newly revealed enemies now move. The archers attempted to move forward to get into line of sight of the Spellweaver. Unfortunately for them, they didn't move enough, so they did not land any attacks. The living bones, being melee on the other hand, did not move at all because they couldn't take any legal path to reach melee range of the Spellweaver, the only targetable enemy left, since of course I was invisible, blocking the door. The Spellweaver on the other hand is not going to move into attack range. The Spellweaver doesn't have very long range, so the enemies that are currently in the final room are not reachable. Instead, the Spellweaver retreats 1 step for 2 reasons. Firstly, this puts her further out of line of sight from the rangers so that, she will avoid taking damage. This also brings her closer to the Bandit Guard that is still in the first room. Hopefully, the Spellweaver can finish that one off next turn. With her movement done, the Spellweaver now takes a long rest. I'm also going to be resting too, surprisingly, because I still have 2 cards remaining in my hand. Alright, so I'm going to short rest here because I want my teleport movement back. So let me flip these. Okay, shuffle. Shuffle. Alright, so this is lost. I'll get this back. So on my turn, I'm going to move. And this is a late move, which is nice. And I will... Do I late move or early move? Shit. Early move. Because I want the disarm to fire. Alright. So we'll lock that in and start the round. I go before everyone. Who's not moving? The archer is not moving, so it will not get disarmed. The living bones is not moving, so it will also not get disarmed. The guard is moving, so the guard will get disarmed for what that's worth. So yeah, after analyzing enemy movement actions, I realized that neither the archers nor the guards were going to move, which rendered my Void Snare useless. I intended to drop a rift at the doorway. Then when it comes to the monster's turn to act, they would be lured out of the doorway, getting disarmed by the rift token on the way, and then getting damaged by the damage traps near the doorway as well. Of course, that was all not going to happen. As I said, they did not move, so playing the Void Snare that turn was a wasted top action. Other classes with ranged attacks, for example, would have gotten some damage in. Those are more consistent moves, whereas with the more situational cards of the Diviner, the turn did not pan out in the way I wanted it to, which was a shame. As I'm watching back this video, editing it right now, I also realized I made another misplay. Yep, you probably spotted it. I tried to place a rift token on the space I was standing on. So I played 2 actions, Void Snare's top and then a Teleport 4 on the bottom. I resolved Void Snare first and attempted to place a rift token on the tile I was standing, which is illegal. You can only place rift tokens on unoccupied hexes without a standee on. So you are not allowed to place rift tokens on tiles that you are standing on. I didn't realize this before. That was a mistake. I could have resolved the teleport 4 first before placing down the rift, but Void Snare only has a range of 3, so I couldn't have placed the rift token on the doorway. I was 4 steps away. Again, I'm learning the intricacies of the diviner as I'm going along. Pardon the mistakes. If it's any consolation, it did not affect the outcome of this game as with the previous mistakes, because none of the enemies in the final room moved into the Rift token on their turn anyway. I'm now down to my final couple turns. With only 1 remaining card in my hand, I chose to long rest. After this long rest, I will recover exactly 1 card from my discard pile paired with the 1 remaining card in my hand, leaving me with a hand size of 2. So at this point, our exhaustion is guaranteed. We are now all in on the Spellweaver to pull through with their massive damage in order for us to win this scenario. The monsters get to move before the Spellweaver and they finally advance. Not enough to trigger the traps, also not enough to land a ranged attack on either of us. So now the Spellweaver gets a free shot at killing these enemies. They played their 2 strongest attack cards in Impaling Eruption and Fire Orbs, and will now choose to resolve the one that is most appropriate after factoring in monster movement. So looking at the board state here, the Spellweaver decides to advance and then perform Fire Orbs on 3 targets, the 3 targets without shield, namely the 2 archers and the straggler bandit guard at the back. This was done with advantage thanks to Eagle Eye Goggles, and ends up killing 2 of the 3 enemies while severely wounding 1 of the archers. So a pretty good Fire Orbs right there. That being said, we are now down to our final action as the Diviner. We play the last 2 cards from our hand at initiative 30 and end up going after the Orchid, Spellweaver and the Living Bones. The Spellweaver first performs the bottom of Flame Strike, which is a range 2 attack, killing the remaining archer. And then the top of Mana Bolt, using the fire infused from Fire Orbs to do a bit of grazing damage to the Living Bones, who then advances into the Spellweaver's melee range and impales themselves on the damage trap. The final Living Bones then makes their way through the doorway into the rift, but they do not get disarmed because I played Void Snare after them. My initiative was slower than them, so Void Snare did not get to land a disarm. So they hit the Spellweaver for minor damage. However, because they were now placed, that Living Bones was now placed right in front of the trap, I decided to switch up my moves. I originally intended to activate the Rift to disarm, but since I went so late, I decided to use Void Snare for the bottom instead, moving forward 2 steps, and then use Duality Shards top for the push, pushing the Living Bones into the damage trap and killing it in 1 fell swoop. Just like that, we managed to win the game, and the Easter Diviner did not exhaust after all. Wow. So, having seen the Diviner in action, how do I feel about it? Well, there are many hoops to jump through, and the Diviner's a very difficult character to play for sure. For starters, because of my strategy, the going on the Bad Omen Cursing strategy, losing a card on your very first turn meant that I just didn't have enough turns to play with. Especially considering that I had to short rest so many times due to the way the scenario played out. My longevity just wasn't there at all, and as a result, for the latter half of the game, I was mentally prepared to go solo with the Spellweaver without the presence of the Diviner at all due to exhaustion. The Rift mechanic was super fiddly, more so than I expected. Void Snare, just didn't work out more than half the time, simply because the enemies did not perform the actions I wanted them to. And I also learned on the go that you couldn't place Rift tokens on occupied hexes such as the one that you're standing on right now, which further restricts your ability to use that card. So yeah, it's just a very fiddly mechanic in general that needs a lot of planning in advance and hopefully some luck with the draw. I also found that the situational nature of the Diviner's cards are often more of a hindrance than a help. In theory, you should play them at the right time for maximum effect. In practice, you're often left with a pair of situational cards at the end of each pass through your deck. And, for example, if your last 2 cards are a heal and shield, and it turns out that your allies don't really need healing or shielding because they're already on full health or because there are no more monsters left, then they're just wasted. And this tends to happen a lot. So yeah, I ended up resolving a lot of my actions as default move tools or attack tools, and that's just not good compared to other classes. I also found that tracking XP this game, I realized that my XP game was rather subpar. That's mostly that's even after using Bad Omen to gain 3 of the 4 XP on it. The reason is because I wasn't really focused on maximizing my XP gain. This was a difficult scenario, and I was more focused on winning the scenario by doing what's best for the team rather than to gain XP. Which you would if you were focused on generating elements, dark and light, and then consuming them with peer into battle or anticipate intricacies for XP gain. Most of the time, I ended up firing anticipate intricacies for curses, which meant that I wasn't using it to gain XP with the top action. And for peer into battle, I used it, as default actions, which were more helpful than actually peering into battle with the use of light, which I didn't really arrange. So because of that, I lost out on a lot of XP opportunities. I ended up gaining 9 XP during the entire game. The Spellweaver ended up gaining more. 9 XP is subpar in my opinion. So something to take note of when playing the Diviner. On the bright side though, there were some shining moments with the Diviner. Some that I didn't really expect. Bad Omen, as expected, turned out to be very good. The ability to just neuter damage altogether is amazing. I think we saved ourselves at least 12 HP worth of damage amongst the 5 curses that we drew. 12 HP is the same amount of max HP that the Spellweaver and I have combined. So yeah, a lot of help. The curse and Bad Omen combo really pulled through for us in this game. The other card that I was very amazed by was Dimensional Transfer. For a card that was this situational, I actually managed to showcase both of its uses, namely when applied on allies and when applied on enemies. I showed you how stunning a wounded enemy was able to guarantee its death by allowing 2 ticks of by allowing the wound to tick down 2 times to kill an elite on 2 HP. Then I showcased how applying invisibility on an ally that was about to long rest allowed you to keep that ally safe. And finally, towards the end of the game, I was using Dimensional Transfer for its bottom, as though it was a move 4 jump. That allowed me to open the door for the final room and then jump back out so that the enemies will be lured through the damage traps. Dimensional Transfer was absolutely essential in this scenario, and I was very glad I was able to showcase the entirety of it. That was very effectively used in my opinion, more so than any of the other cards. All the weird diviner tricks like rifts, tokens, those didn't really matter. Peeking into modifier decks, those didn't really matter. Dimensional Transfer was what did a lot of work and was pretty fancy in that regard. The other fancy card was our bread and butter Duality Shards, which might seem like a very vanilla card at first glance, but the push and pull effect really helped out, and I was able to do some good damage and kill a couple of monsters with it. So pretty good. So the main lessons learned from playing the Diviner is that as a whole, if you look at the big picture, it supports better in a 4-player party. Like most support classes such as the Tinkerer, they really don't do well in 2-player scenarios because in 2-player scenarios, both players need to do a lot of damage in order to, conquer the scenario. If only one player is doing damage, like how I was leaning on the Spellweaver to do the damage output this game, you'll find that it takes a very long time to whittle down enemies. The other aspect of it is that cards like Protective Aura's top and Peer into Battle's bottom just simply work better when you have more allies, since it says affect all allies. In a 2 or 3 player setting, if you insist on playing the Diviner with a small party, pair it with a strong damaging class. This is the reason why I chose the Spellweaver of the starter 6 to go with the Diviner. Being able to dish out so much AoE damage and just dispatch all these monsters was a huge help, especially when clearing that final room. It seemed like it would take forever to kill those bones and archers, but with fire orbs and impaling eruption, the Spellweaver just does so much work and makes up for the fact that the Diviner does virtually no damage. The other thing is that even though both of these characters are squishy, both of them have 6 health and they are ranged characters that do not like to be melee, the Diviner is able to help out with stacking curses and healing and shielding. and so we managed to survive the scenario without losing too many hit points at all. I felt that was a really good showcase of the supportive nature of Diviner, the ability to just mitigate damage for yourself and allies, and that was the other thing that showed through this game. So hopefully you've learned some things about the Diviner as well. It definitely is not representative of all Diviners. For starters, I didn't use all the Rift cards. Perhaps if I played better and if I included all the Rift cards, things may have gone a lot better. But I hope this is an interesting showcase of the Bad Omen build. I think there aren't a lot of people out there who dare try this build. I think it's more effective in a 2-player setting than any other. So hopefully you enjoyed that. Hopefully you enjoyed this content. And that's it for this video. Thanks for watching this hour-long marathon. I'll see you in the next video. Bye.